Good evening, everyone. Make sure everyone can hear me before I just jump on in. I think we're live. Hi, everybody. I'm Stephanie Gularte. I'm the CEO and producing artistic director at American Stage. Thank you so much for joining us for our very first creative conversation. This is a platform for us to talk about what's going on in our world right now as it relates to American Stage and our arts community in general. And I have to first let you know where I'm coming to you from. I'm actually spending a couple of weeks out on the West Coast with my family in a little town called Diamond Springs, California. And I'm actually in our family's deli, Gularte's Deli, Pizza and Deli, where I worked as a teenager, and this is where I came to find a little Wi-Fi in this small town. So thank you for bearing with me as there may be some sound around me as I dive us into our conversation and eventually introduce our guest, John Collins, the Executive Director of the St. Pete Arts Alliance. We're really thrilled to have John here. I first just want to acknowledge that we are in the middle of an extraordinary time. I think for most of us, we would say an unprecedented time in our lifetimes. And throughout history, when societies have experienced extraordinary times, the arts have come to mean something particularly important. And the arts have served throughout history during extraordinary times as such a key and instrumental resource to humanity, as a means of holding a mirror up to our experiences, helping to process the context of what we're going through, helping to provide catharsis for what we're experiencing, and also to help amplify voices that had been muted up to that moment in time. And I would say that all of those things apply right now. So the goal of tonight's conversation is not to solve all of the questions and answer all of the dilemmas that we're facing as a society, but to really open up a conversation about what the future looks like post-COVID, how we get there, and what the role of the arts play inside of that, and how American Stage partners with our community now and going forward to ensure that we are a stronger community in the future, that we come out of this healthier and more vital than ever before. I want to encourage you throughout the conversation to please use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen to post any questions that you have. We're going to save some time at the end of our conversation. We're just spending about 30 minutes tonight chatting, but we're going to save a little bit of time toward the end for your questions. So we do want this to be a dialogue, and I want to hear what you're thinking, what's on your mind, and do the best I can to address those questions. I'm going to ask Jared to share on the screen here what we've got coming up for our creative conversations going forward over the next few weeks. And I am hoping that, Jared, if you can pull up the list of creative conversations that we'll be having over the next 4 Mondays. So tonight we're talking about staging a creative comeback. And I'm not seeing it on my screen, so I'm going to make sure. There we go. So tonight we're talking about staging a creative comeback. John Collins is our guest. Next week we're going to talk about what it means to be a city of the arts, and in particular talking about the business of the arts in our city. And I'll be happy to welcome Chris Steinecker, CEO of the Chamber of Commerce in St. Pete, to that conversation. On June 22nd, we're going to talk about anti-racism in practice and what that looks like in our arts community and at American Stage specifically. And on the 29th, we're going to talk about a safe return, 2021 and beyond, what it looks like to come back together in shared space. But tonight I want to dive right into what's happening now with American Stage. I'm going to share a little bit about what we're doing and what we're considering, and then I'm going to invite John to join the conversation to open it up to what's going on community-wide. So on the next slide, Jerry, if you would share, many of you have heard about what we're calling our virtual return at American Stage. As we like everyone, kind of paused and realized that the position that we're all in is not something that is short-lived. And as it relates to performing arts and anything that's really based around bringing a lot of people together in a space, we're looking at a much longer road to returning to anything that resembles what we have been accustomed to. And it really, the reality of that really required us at American Stage to really examine our mission and really consider what is the essence of our role in our community. And we consider the work that we do and the mission of American Stage to really be about creating a community center, bringing community together, promoting connection and empathy through live storytelling. So with the live storytelling component removed from the equation, what do we have and who are we? And so our digital return really was about taking the three components of what American Stage has been doing: our arts education, our community engagement, and our professional performances, and trying to innovate ways to continue to bring those things to our community. And so quickly in the next slide here, kind of reflect on what we're doing with our virtual stage and our virtual academy. We're bringing live storytelling. Yesterday we presented our first Shakespeare production, Shakespeare Light, a 1 hour long Romeo and Juliet via Zoom, where each of our performers were in their own homes performing their part. That will continue throughout the month of June, and we'll continue in July with some new plays, some new shorts, and then in August we'll be presenting our scenes and moments from American Stage plays from throughout history, and all of these will be presented in digital form. We're also events like tonight and having community conversations via this medium. And our camps have gone virtual as well. So summer camp started today with virtual classes. We'll be hoping to do on-site classes as well later on in the summer, but we'll continue this virtual classroom to enable families to connect with the experience of creating and having the opportunity to have arts education all summer long. So we're finding ways to innovate so that we can really stay connected to our community in a personal way. And I say in a personal way because we recognize, and it's one of the things that we kind of wrestle with, is the understanding that our expertise is not in creating videos and in telling stories via a digital platform. We exist to really, where our expertise lies is in that really visceral, in the shared space kind of opportunities and experiences that we all know and love. So we want the work that we do to have a real personal feel. We want it we're going to show, we're going to be transparent as we go through this work and acknowledge that we're learning how to work and stay connected through this platform, but that we really want to be ourselves, be authentic, and through that, hopefully create an opportunity for us to have a sense of community right here that looks a little different than when we connect up with maybe a more sophisticated Netflix movies and other platforms that are entertaining us, but not necessarily giving us that sense of community that I think we're so hungry for right now. We also want to keep our community connected with one another. And so by you being here tonight and asking your questions and having the exchanges, there's dialogue there. And that's such an important thing, important part of what we do is creating dialogue between us and you and between our audiences with one another. And then really, we're also wanting to make sure that we continue to exercise our creative muscles. We create. That's what we do. We tell stories and we innovate ways to do that. And so rather than just pausing everything and going dark for an extended period of time, we really felt it was important that we continue to work and that we continue to provide our artists with opportunities as well, keep our artists working as much as we can. So that's the goal. Those are the goals, the modest and tremendous goals behind our digital return. That said, that last point there, but it's not live theater. And we are very aware of what we're missing and what we long to get back to. being in a space together and experiencing storytelling, experience live performances, particularly in the intimacy of a space like an American Stage, it has a particular power and potency to it that cannot be replicated in any kind of digital platform. So what will it look like, and when will we be able to come back together into a shared space? And this next slide here just kind of really is not, again, not about answering a lot of things right here, because these are all really, really big topics, and big, long conversations can be had around each of these. But just to share with you some of the things that we're looking at, that we're doing a lot of research and planning and preparation, and you'll be finding a survey that will be going out soon to our audiences to gather more information. But these are just a few of the really significant topics that we must consider before we open our doors back up, regardless of what the state of Florida says that we're permitted to do. And so the first thing I've mentioned here is artist health and safety. So it's one of the things that, you know, we kind of may forget as we think about bringing audiences into a close space together, and what that means, and how can we have people seated not as close together. But for the artist, that rehearsal process, that performance process, that is all about proximity. That is all about sharing a space intimately. And right now, the performers unions are really trying to figure out how to set criteria and protocols to ensure that artists are safe and artists are kept healthy, and provide parameters for us as theater producers to understand how we can ensure the safety and health of our artists, which is so, so important, of course. And then audience health and safety. Obviously, when we do open back up, it's not going to immediately look the same. We are going to have to consider so many different measures to make people feel safe, and just to genuinely provide a more safe and socially distant environment for an extended period of time. And so, from taking temperatures to spacing out seating, doing smaller houses for our performances, having different processes of bringing people in and out of the theater, doing programs that are just individually given out, distributed, and not recycled or reused, different things like that, requiring masks. All of those sorts of things are under consideration. Staff health and safety and training. So not only do we have to really make sure we're taking really good care of our staff, who are continuing to work so hard behind the scenes, make sure that they stay healthy and safe as they come back into our space, but also that they have the adequate training to feel comfortable conveying our new processes with the public. A new model for sharing space. We reside in a building where other businesses are taking place. We reside inside the downtown campus of St. Pete College. And so working with them to make sure that their practices and our practices are complementary, and that we can have some assurance that our health and safety protocols are being managed as we are also sharing the space with other businesses. Considerations for returning to in-person performances: equity, diversity, and inclusion. These last weeks have been humbling and stunning, and really have created a moment that we cannot let pass as we are paused in our live performances, to say, when we come back, and even obviously before then in the work that we're doing now, but how do things look different from the standpoint of making sure that our environment is an environment that truly is welcoming for all, and makes anyone and all in our community feel that they belong. So very much more will be said on that down the road. And then how can we continue to expand the notion of the theater as a community center? And there's a conversation that we'll have just specifically on that, theater as community center, as we get closer to looking to open our doors back up. So a lot to consider, a lot of things that we, as I said, are already discussing, but things are continuing to evolve. And this is happening at the community-wide level. And American Stage is part of a greater ecosystem of a really vibrant, healthy arts community that all have really taken a profound hit in this COVID crisis. And I want to introduce now and thank him for waiting in the wings to join the conversation, John Collins, whom I respect so much and have known for since I arrived. John was one of the first people I had a conversation with. He's somebody who truly is an advocate for the arts in general and for our arts community specifically. And John has been working tirelessly before COVID and since on creating a healthy St. Pete arts community. And John, I'd love to hear from you. Welcome. Thank you for joining the conversation.
Well, thank you, first of all, for having me and for your leadership in kicking off this series, which I think applies to everyone, not just American Stage, and I greatly appreciate that leadership. Your audience may not know that you also serve on the Pinellas Arts Relief Fund Committee, which I also appreciate, and we can touch on that in a bit. But I think all the arts are here together. The Arts Alliance, for those who are maybe new, is the umbrella agency for all of the arts, advocating for the arts, trying to raise money for the arts. And when this hit, and offices had to be closed, we dived in to see what we could do. The arts and cultural ecosystem in St. Petersburg was very fragile at best anyway. From from theater to art walk to murals, anything art produced in all its disciplines, from trying to convince people that suddenly actors were out of work, that painters were out of work, that dancers are out of work, and then all the people who support them, the art workers, if you will, were out of work. And then frankly, what is often not much well known is all the restaurants around us are now hurting. The minute everybody doesn't go to theater, I know my wife and I don't go to the restaurant around the corner and before we go to see American Stage. So suddenly everything collapses together, and just as a bartender is out of work, a musician is out of work. So we dived in to try to help out with some of that.
And you've done so much already, including sharing out with all of the arts organizations and individual artists, all the different resources that are out there. So there, for those who aren't tapped into all of the work and really care that's going into making sure that our arts community is able to make a comeback. John, you've been really instrumental and tapped into so much of that. So if you could just share, in general, your thoughts on what the scope of this is really. What the scope of this is and its implications for our arts community, and what you see. These are two big questions, so we're just kind of skimming the surface a bit here. But what you see as being essential to a creative comeback for St. Pete.
It happens to tie in really well with your introduction, and I see you're going to just found out you're going to have Chris Steinacher next week, which I think is brilliant to talk about the City of the Arts. Chris in the St. Petersburg Chamber of Commerce, which I'm fortunate to serve on their board, has come up with a proposed framework for developing distinctive economic recovery, and it applies to us just as much as any other business. The first one is relieve. How do we relieve, help, aid the pain? Second is reopen. Third would be then recover, which is partially what we're talking about. Even if we open tomorrow, when will the audiences come back? And then reimagine the future. Just as you said, what's going to be the virtual future, what's going to be the future of the theater experience is the same for what is going to be the future for selling art. If we can't do art walk, how are these artists in galleries going to survive? And I think what COVID has certainly catapulted forward for us is the need for all of our artists, all artists of all disciplines, to learn how to be a one-person or many-person business. Because there is relief and aid out there for people if they were a sole proprietorship or if they claim to be an LLC. That just isn't available to them right now. So we got together, the Arts Alliance got together with the Pinellas Community Foundation, Creative Pinellas, and we had support from Healthy St. Pete Foundation. We were able to raise the money, and we were able to do a series of awards 2 months ago that went out awarding I think we awarded well over 148 artist grants for $500, and then some $1,000 grants to some nonprofits and to some creative businesses, which I fought for. I think we are all in creative businesses. It's just that some are nonprofit and some are for-profit. They just simply have a different business model, but we're all delivering one form or another art, which, as you said, is what we so desperately need to come together now to deal with these issues and these crises that we are involved in. The second round that we raised funds for, the checks are actually sitting on my kitchen table right now. I wrote them over the weekend, another 68 checks to artists. And where I'm going with this is it's not about the amount of money, it's never nearly enough. But we on the jury, if you will, the committee we read 520 applications for arts relief funds. That was 520 pleas for help. And what we discovered was it was more than pleas that I thought it would be for, can you help my business succeed? Can you help this? These were pleas for, can you help me pay the rent? Can you help me buy food? Can you help me get health insurance? My car was repossessed last week. Can I make a payment? And it was profoundly moving to me, and I'm sure to my colleagues who had to read all of these, to make decisions on whose pain we could relieve and who we were unable to help. Out of 520, we were only able to help 207, I think. So the need is still out there. And again, to your point, the next step is if we can't, in addition to being able to hand out some funding, what can we do for a handout for our artists? What programs can we help engage in terms of committing funds to support theater, wherever that may be? Funds to support dance. There was supposed to be a dance performance yesterday on First Avenue South. Unfortunately, it was rained out. We're bringing dance, I don't mean to take credit for this, but dance was coming to the folks in an amazing setup where you would ride your bike past 12 dancers, and that as you went by, it would be a flip chart, and you would see the dance in its entirety by the time you were done. So trying to get art into the streets. Murals, we're talking to mural artists about doing something as we speak to bring community together. But that would bring me to the next phase of reopen. And we hosted a webinar a while back, as you know, about national statistics on what it will take to bring people back to the theater, take people back to the parks, to the museums. We've been trying to just provide that information so that all of our nonprofits and for-profit institutions can make those decisions themselves. And the one thing that's come through for everyone, as you mentioned earlier, is safety. We want to be safe. We want everybody to wear masks. We want everyone to wear masks who come see us. We all want to keep our own germs to ourselves. We have to. So how can we, and we know we don't like it, but you still have to. That was a big discussion with my arts executives who are advising me for the Restart Committee on Friday. And it was the big topic of a conversation with the Mayor's Restart Committee today, that I represent the arts on that committee, was the use of masks and how we can better engage, inform, and convince people that they should be wearing masks. The next step in Chris's thing of relieve, reopen, recover, I think is where we are now. How can we come out of this recovery and work with our political system, with our business community, and with each other to reopen safely? And what do we have to convince the museum public and the theater public that it is, when you're ready, that when you are ready to come back, it will be a safe experience that they will enjoy. I think the irony right now is what mother or father or caregiver doesn't want to take their kids out to a museum and get out of the house, and yet we're unable to provide that. We are unable to come together and sing together. We're unable to come together and be communal together, which is what our DNA needs, I think.
And it will be so important that as arts organizations, the institutions like American Stage and the other major arts organizations in town really kind of provide that leadership of what it looks like to bring people back safely. in a safe and healthy way, because part of what is so essential to the experience is feeling comfortable and safe in our environments in order for that connection to the work to really do its thing and have its power that it can have in our lives. And so that will be so essential. And thank you for providing that kind of snapshot of how much need there is out there. And I want to use the word again, the ecosystem of our arts community, because it is truly, there's such a dynamic community here that is, as you mentioned, it was, even before COVID, it really is very finely balanced and surviving so much based on the will and the resilience of the artists and the organizations themselves. And so this is a time when, as we continue to recover as a community, that we really will need for the community to come together and think about how to shore up and make sure that artists and arts organizations, American Stage, we have 30 people on staff, but we also hire close to 150 technicians, artists, teaching artists, and others who work for us for multiple weeks throughout the year. So we are an economic driver. We're an employer. As you said, and I'm so glad you mentioned it, John, that when people come to theater, they go to the restaurants. We are a really key part of the economy as well as the culture of our community. And so the entire ecosystem, the artists and the institutions will really need to all come together and have the community really come together around the work that we do. And I'd like to hear, before we open it up to questions, which we're going to do in just a moment, because we're talking so much about the struggle, and by necessity, we need to share what the struggle is and what the true hardships are. I also want to think about what is possible on the other side of this, and some thoughts for a vision for what we could do and what we could build as we rebuild our arts community. And you have thoughts on that, John?
I think and this wasn't my line, it came from someone, a museum director, I believe, but how can we gently reawaken our community through the arts and start bringing people back together? It's what people are going to be reaching out to do. When we looked at what do people really want to do when they can do it, and then what would make them feel safe to do that. As soon as we get past those things, I think our community will come out stronger. I don't want to be a Pollyanna about it, but it wasn't long ago, we didn't have what we have now. We didn't have 2 equity theaters. We didn't have 10 museums with an 11th one on the way. We have strength in bringing all of that together as an arts experience in St. Pete. And I am lobbying for this down the road, that when we are able, we ought to be able to come up with ways to better market that experience, not just to each other, to our audiences who already love us, but for arts tourism. How can we make that a much better way of bringing more people in? And frankly, I think it will be a time when we can continue to earn, or perhaps better to say, build on the moniker City of the Arts. And when we proclaimed that years ago, it was aspirational. And I think we have an incredibly wonderful aspirational arts community here, a welcoming arts community. Life still goes on. I got a call today from someone who is saying, where can I find a studio? I'm moving to St. Petersburg. I want to be an artist. At first I shuddered. So we are still getting those calls that I've been getting. I used to get 3 or 4 a week, but now we're getting maybe 1 a week. Where can we go? I'm an artist. Where can I live? Those are the kind of things that St. Pete has a strong foundation. We may be on a bit of hiatus right now, but I do think we'll be able to build upon that. And I think it's also brought all of the arts leaders together in ways that I know when I hosted a Zoom meeting of 10 museum executives, several of them didn't know the others. They had never met. So now we're doing this virtually. It'd be my hope to be able to do that personally as soon as we can, because the cross-fertilization that can occur will be wonderful for the city.
I agree, and I can attest to that, we are all so busy and kind of like family. Everybody is going in their directions and mean well, but when a crisis comes up, you all come together and you really find strength in one another, and that has happened. I want to add to what you said, a vision for also truly going to the next level of making the arts something that is to be experienced by all. I know in the theater, people who really care and treasure the institution of the theater are always looking around and saying, how can we get more young people here? How can we get more diversity in these doors? Because we don't want to keep it to ourselves. Those of us who love this work, we don't want it to be something that's just for the few. And this is an opportunity to really reimagine how is it we can really serve the community and open our doors and make sure that everyone feels like the theater is for them as well. And I say that specifically about our medium, the theater, because I think we have a particular opportunity here. So I'm looking forward to that as being a part of the next phase. And I do want to provide some space for any questions. I think we have had a couple questions that have come in, and Kristen or Jared out there, if you want to share with us.
We have, yeah, Steph. We do have a question from Keith regarding any plans for outdoor or large venue performances during this time of social distancing.
Yeah, great question, Keith. There are conversations and there is movement happening on looking at the two options, the very options that you talk about. I've been conversations, actually John and I have had a conversation about what it would look like for American Stage to do some performances out at Williams Park, which is right across the street from us, as well as looking at if we moved into a larger venue and did some performances in a larger space that would allow us to keep people spaced out. So we're not there yet, but those conversations are happening. I think that these are things that a lot of us would like to see happen, and so we'll continue, and I'll keep you updated on our progress with making those things happen.
Great. And the follow-up question to that was, are we looking for business sponsors for the recovery phase of American Stage?
The answer to that is absolutely yes. As I alluded to, being able to be connected and support one another and have support from the business community is as important or more important now than ever. And it's an opportunity for us to get more creative together. Let's talk, call me, email me, and let's talk about what a partnership looks like now. What does it look like now with where American Stage is? I'm really grateful that Bank of America has stepped up, and they're really helping to want to support and help make sure that we're able to continue to keep artists working through our virtual platforms. And we are definitely open to those conversations and could use your support. So yes. I think we're just about at our time, or maybe just a little bit past. So I did. It was intentional to keep these conversations tight so that we really, you can keep them on your calendar as something we're gonna spend just 30 minutes together, but really they're just kind of scratching the surface of these really larger conversations. And I do hope that you'll continue to join me. If we need to go beyond the 4 weeks, we'll have some more conversations, but we've got the next 4 weeks together to talk about the different aspects of this. And as I said, next week we'll be talking with the CEO of the Chamber, Chris Steinecker, who's a tremendous person, as well as brings a great business perspective, and we'll talk about the arts and business. But in the meantime, please join us in our virtual return. Next Sunday at 2 p.m., we'll be presenting, 2 p.m. Eastern Time, presenting The Comedy of Errors, a 1-hour Shakespeare Light version via Zoom. It will be fun, and we'd love to virtually see you there and be a part of our ongoing storytelling as we stay connected to our community virtually. Thank you so much. Thanks for being here, and I look forward to talking with you at Creative Conversations next week.